Hey guys, Ironic here from TGG, and welcome to the basic damage and elementals portion of my basic damage guide, which is going to teach you how to mod weapons. This is the first episode in a many-part series, which I'm just starting out today, and in this guide we're going to teach you how to mod weapons and what the theory behind it all is. Like, why do we put these mods on these weapons, and why do we... let's say, why do we use critical stats on weapons? Why do we, what is status? Are elementals just status? We're going to be answering these questions in full, or I'm going to be answering these questions in full in this series. Let's get started. So first, I'm going to need you to pick up a weapon such as the Karak, easy beginner weapon, MR2. Like this, there's 3 variants of this thing, so it'll be perfect. But I'll be showing you the beginner variant against beginner weapons. So, base stats of this weapon. As you can see, accuracy. The accuracy is 28.6. That's about average for rifles. That's just how it fires. Critical chance is only 9%, which means out of every 100 bullets, only 9 of them are going to hit a critical. We'll talk about criticals next episode. Just don't worry about these for now. Fire rate, it fires about 12 rounds a second. That's pretty good. 30 round magazine, that means that it'll be firing for about 3 seconds. It also has a 1.0 multi-shot. We'll be going over that later in the episode. Alarming, pretty much all weapons have a noise alarming. That basically means that if you're invisible, you fire it, someone's going to hear it. 2-second reload, good. 15% status, we'll talk about status later. Now you'll be noticing impact, puncture, and slash. So what are these? These are the base damage types in Warframe. What impact does is it does more damage against shields. Puncture does more damage against armor, and slash I think is neutral. What slash does is it does a damage over time effect with a status. We're not going to be talking about status for a while. Just know that slash is pretty much useless unless you're using status. So, impact against shields, puncture against armor. So if we take this base weapon right here against these level 5 Lancers and Troopers that I've prepared here, we're going to be actually doing pretty decent without any mods. Like, this weapon by itself without any damage mods can carry you pretty high. Like, granted these are pretty weak enemies, so let me bump up their level. This is a simulation room, by the way, if you don't know what this is. To, let's say, about level 20. Now you're going to see my weapons really struggle to keep up. Like, look at this. Like, it took me an entire mag to kill a single enemy. Now, granted, the Lancers are pretty easy, too. Now, the more puncture you have on a weapon, the higher damage it's going to do to Grenier, because puncture I think does about 75% more damage to armor. But all in all, it doesn't really matter, because this is where we're going to start needing to get some mods in this weapon. But for the first few planets, your gun should do fine with just basic mods. Like, as you can see, I'm hitting some status procs. We'll talk about those in like the 3rd episode. So now we've talked about IPS, which that's what you call impact, puncture, slash. That's why we veterans call it. Let's talk about, before we talk about elementals, let's talk about damage. This mod Serration adds damage to your weapon. 135%, which means it's going to be about doubling your damage. That's going to bring me up to 68. If we do the same test on the same enemies, it's going to be doing a lot better, because it adds a bunch of damage. Now this is almost a max Serration, so you're not going to be seeing these exact results, but this is a fairly beginner weapon. So, I mean, just with a single mod that's maxed out, look at how much better this weapon is faring against these enemies. Like, it's doing so well. So, yeah. That's basically the basics of damage. Sorry, my ammo is really high because of a glitch. So sorry about that. Okay, now let's talk about elementals. I'm going to take off the damage for now. Just remember how it was doing before I put on the damage. Now we're going to talk about elementals. Now, there are 4 different elementals. There's cold, electric, heat, and toxin. Now, each of them do bonus damage to stuff. Toxin, I'm pretty sure, yeah, heat is the best element to have by itself, because there's also fusion elements. We'll talk about this soon, but yeah, you can basically you can mix elements together to make different elements. But heat is the best one at base. Just put heat on your weapon, and it's going to be pretty good. So, yeah. Cold is decent. It doesn't do that much damage, but, like, all the different elementals. So, Toxin, it's alright. It's a decent beginner thing. Heat is the best for just single enemy. Stormbringer brings electricity. That will do decent. Again, electricity, it's not the greatest. But, like, when we're talking about all the elementals, yeah, cold is in here. Cold is probably one of the worst, along with electricity. If you're either going to run Toxin or Heat, but don't run them together because it makes a bad element. So yeah, now that we're done with that, remember how the weapon did without any mods, and now with a single heat mod against these level 20 enemies. Look at that. So you'll notice that I'm hitting some status on the enemy's top. Status is basically like you get a 15% chance. You have basically, yeah, I set the enemy on fire there. That's basically how it's going to work. Like, you have a 50% chance per bullet to set the enemy on fire, or poison them, or electric, like shock them with electric and freeze them, or slow them down with cold. That's how status works. That's all I'm going to talk about it. So, next let's talk about fusion elementals. Now, this is where things get pretty powerful. So I'm going to start with the weaker ones and go to the best ones. So, let's do this. So I've got a bunch of mods here, don't worry. So let's start off with magnetic, which is arguably the worst element in the game. So you combine electric and cold, and you can see it makes magnetic. Now what magnetic does is it increases the damage you do to shields. So magnetic increases the damage you do to shields. That's all it does. Shields are really easy to take down in pretty much any level, and if you're focusing on status, the Toxin, if you proc Toxin on the enemy, it goes through their shields. So don't worry about magnetic is the worst one in the game. Next, we are going to talk about Blast, which is another one of the arguably worst ones in the game, which is cold and heat. What Blast does is it reduces enemy accuracy. That's really all it does. It's not the greatest. Again, you're just going to want to run heat on this thing if you just don't want to run a fusion elemental. Now we're on to the decent ones. So the next one, well, this one's okay. So this next one is called Gas. It is heat and toxin. What Gas does, if you look here, it creates clouds that do a damage over time effect. So Gas does a damage over time effect. It's okay. It's not as good as Slash, and it's not as good as Toxin. Toxin's more single target, and this is more like Gas damage. The damage types themselves are really bad when it comes to everything, pretty much. But if you want to fight against really high level Corpus, you're probably going to want to go with Magnetic, or the next one on the list. And yeah. So these next ones on the list are insane. So first off, we're going with Radiation. What Radiation does is, we're not going to focus on the status effect. It's basically neutral against most enemies, which means that you're going to be dealing the most damage with Radiation than you would with anything else. Now, certain enemies are resistant to certain elements. You'll have to Google that, because I personally don't really know too much of these elements, because I don't use them. The two I'm going to be using are the next ones that are going to come up, but if you look at this, it just does a bit more damage. Like, again, you're not really going to want to focus on what elementals you're using, aside from the enemy's resistances. So, these guys have Ferrite armor. which is the basic type of armor in Warframe, and it is weak to an element called corrosive, and an element called heat, which we will talk about soon. Well, we already talked about heat. That's why heat is so good, because Grineer are the toughest enemies you're going to fight in the game, pretty much. So, that's basically what radiation does. Now let's talk about something a bit better. The next one on the list is called a corrosive. This is the best element for levels 1 to 100. Level 100 is probably the highest level you guys are going to see pretty much in the game. So, aside from Steel Path, which you guys don't need to know what Steel Path is. It's basically hard mode. So, this is corrosive. What corrosive does is it does 75% more damage to ferrite armor, which is the most common armor type in the game. Now, you saw that same test with radiation on the elements. Watch that. See how good that is? It's doing a lot of damage to them. I killed I killed 5 enemies in one trip. I mean, these are level 20s. These are almost the highest level enemies you will see in the game. In the star chart, the highest is level 40. So that's half of the level with 2 mods. That's half of the levels with 2 mods. And also, you might be confused, I've got 60 mod capacity. How do you get 60 mod capacity? Now, if you're on PlayStation or Xbox, you press in the right thumbstick, and it'll show up this menu. Don't worry about that yet. This right here, Organ Catalyst, it's 20 Platinum, or you can get it from the Nightwave system. Search up what that is. I don't have time to explain it. So, yeah, Organ Catalyst. That turns it from 30 to 60 at rank 30. So that's corrosive. Now let's talk about the second best element in the game for base damage, which is viral. What viral does is it does more damage to health. So it's going to be doing better than all the others aside from corrosive. Like you see, whereas corrosive was killing them in like 3 to 4 bullets, this thing is killing them in a little bit. Like you see, it kind of shows like viral does 50% more damage to pretty much everything. Aside from, like, Corpus units, which have shields, and you don't do more damage to shields, but once you get to health, it's going to kill them. Basically, Viral is the best overall element, but Corrosive is the one you should build with for early levels. So now we're talking about fusion elements. So, how do fusion elementals mix with IPS? So, if you have a high puncture weapon with corrosive and damage, let's say I put on corrosive back on this weapon here, and I put on my serration, which we already talked about that. This weapon, if you don't know, this symbol cuts the mod price in half. If you want to know how to do that, you can put this build on with no catalyst. So that's going to be doing a lot of that. Let's bump these enemies' levels up to let's say level 40, which is the highest level you'll see in this game, in the star chart pretty much. Level 40, level 45-ish. And we'll see that with 3 mods, we actually are able to kill them with a weapon you can get fairly early on in this game. Like, with 3 mods, granted these mods are almost maxed out, you're going to be doing this. You're going to be taking out these level 40 enemies fairly easily, honestly, with a basic weapon, such as the Karak. So that's kind of how it works. It's like fusion elements and IPS. If you've got a high puncture weapon with corrosive, it's going to take you pretty far into the game. Like, it's going to carry you through the star chart. Even this rusty thing will carry you through the star chart. Now let's talk about damage, multi-shot, and fire rate. So, damage, you already know what damage does. It just increases the base damage. Now, don't look at this build. That's my frame. Frames don't matter. I'm not running anything that'll up my damage on my frame. There's certain stuff you can run. Like, there's an aura called Corrosive Projection, which lowers enemy armor, which makes you do more damage. So, let's just take all these mods off. So, you already know what damage does. We already talked about damage. Now, let's talk about multi-shot. Well, first, fire rate. So, with fire rate, it's going to be firing more rounds a second, which means it's going to be less ammo efficient, Let's lower these enemies back down to like level 20 here real quick. Because we're not going to be able to kill these things very easily. So, what fire rate does... It's less this weapon's less ammo efficient, but it kills stuff faster. Fire rate's definitely a good damage per second option, but people like me, I'm not a huge fan of damage per second. Now you might notice yellow numbers, those are called criticals. I'll talk about those next video. So, yeah, so fire rate's definitely a good option, but compared to running more damage, it's just not worth it. So, if you want to run fire rate and you've got nothing else to run, go ahead, but I don't really suggest it. Now let's talk about multi-shot. So what is multi-shot? Mod split chamber. There's also another mod called Vigilante Armaments right here. You can get this from the Plains of Eidolon. I'm not going to be using this. So what split chamber does, brings your multi-shot up to 1.9. What that does, it gives you a 90% chance to fire a second bullet without consuming an extra ammo. Which means that 9 out of 10 bullets I fire are going to be firing 2 bullets instead of 1. As you can see, there's like 2 little dots there. It's a bit bigger. So 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be firing 2 bullets for the price of 1, which is really good. Like, if I just take this without the fire rate, this is going to do some really good damage, as you can see. And always aim for the head, if you can. As you can see, when I was only able to kill, like, 2 enemies with the fire rate and multi-shot, I'm now able to kill all those in 2 magazines. So, multi-shot and damage, those are the 2 mods you want to run on every single weapon. That's how you're going to be able to get through this game. Is damage and multi-shot are 2 of the mods that everyone runs on their weapons. Now, if we mix those with elementals, which this will take a catalyst in order to do this, or Forma, if you don't know what Forma is, basically... You get about thing to rank 30, you lower it back down to rank 0.
Can somebody else help her?
1 second. Okay, so basically Forma, you do this, you plug into Forma. I don't currently have any because I use it all. You put on one of these things called polarities, which when you put a mod on them, it cuts the price in half. It resets the weapon from rank 30 back to rank 0, though. So that's how it works. So, yeah, you could probably get this full build on this weapon. I just suggest using Catalyst because it's easier. And plus, Nightwave challenges are fairly easy. So, yeah. Now, yeah. Let's talk about this. So now, if I bring these... I'm going to bring these back up to 40 because mixing all your current knowledge together will get you through the star chart. Like, this is... Like, look at that. Level 40 enemies. Dead with a master rank 2 weapon. This weapon is something that pretty much anyone has access to. And with 4 mods, it just takes everything out. Now, you do need to upgrade your mods. It's a thing called Fusion. You can use Endo and credits to make your mod better. That's how you do it. So, yeah. That's the star chart right there. This weapon can take care of the star chart for you. Even though it's not even a weapon that's really good. Like, there's other weapons that are much better that you can get. Like, and this weapon will take you through the star chart. So, yeah, that's basically what we've learned. Just, like, run elements. Like, search up what the elements are strong against. And use the elements against... It's corrosive for Grenier. It's viral for pretty much everything else. So... Infested are weak to heat, so run like viral heat against infested. Okay, yeah, you can actually run 2 different fusion elementals if you didn't know. So there's also elemental mods that have 60% status and 60% elemental. Don't worry about status. I'll talk about that in the 3rd video, but I'm going to use these as an example. So if I run this, then I could also run this. And where's the other one? Where's the other one? Hello? Right here. And I can run Blast and Corrosive together. You can run 2 fusion. You can run... Corrosive Heat is the best elemental combo in the game for level 1 to 100. Pretty much, because... Oh. That's not good. There we go. Like, you have to be careful because the mods go, like, this way. It goes from top left to bottom left. So, if you're making elemental combo, you want to go from this way with your elements to this way with your elements. So, if I put heat there, it's going to change it to radiation. Put that there, it's going to prioritize radiation. And if I put that there, it's going to prioritize heat. So, yep, so corrosive heat, damage, that's everything you really need to know about base damage. Certain weapons can run more multi-shot than others with special mods, but just look at this. Annihilating level 40 enemies. Now granted, you do need to start going into crit and status for level 100 enemies, but from level 1 to about maybe 60 base Grenier, you'll do great. I mean, if we bump these guys up to level 100, you'll see why level 100s are so difficult. I mean, these aren't even the tough enemies. These are the basic cannon fodder units. Pretty much. So, I mean, look at that. It takes me more than a clip to kill him. So, level 100, you're not going to see level 100s until really end game. So this thing can take down about level 60s. Let me test that theory here real quick. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my other ones. I'll be talking about crit in the next video, or critical, like critical chance and critical damage. Then in the next video, I will be talking about status. And then I'll be starting to talk about other weapon types. See, I mean, look at this. Few mods and it just takes everything down. See, you too can kill level 60 enemies if you can mod stuff. I mean, this is just a basic weapon. I mean, it's not even really worth using. Like, when it comes to other weapons such as, like, just look at this. Karak Wraith, which is the better version. Look at how much better everything is. Like, it does more damage, it's got more status and crit, which status and crit are something you don't really need to worry about until later in the game. And let me just take off this build. So yeah, if we take the same weapon and give it damage, multi-shot, and 3 elementals, heat, and toxin plus electricity is corrosive. So I got that's radiation. Let me do this. Just, oh, I'm running the wrong. Why did I misclicked that right there? Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, if we run this, you'll see it's doing a lot more damage. Surprisingly, like, look at that, 512. Wow. I mean, that's a lot of damage. Let me go over here. We shoot the enemies. And look, this is a variant. Variants are more powerful than base weapons, such as primes, wraiths, vandals, prismas, etc. Kuva, even. Kuva especially. Kuva Karak compared to normal Karak isn't even a competition. So, yeah. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video and found it informative, make sure to hit that like button, and make sure to check out the next videos where I'm going to be talking about the different damage types in this game. Sorry this video was so long-winded. The other ones won't be because I'll just be going over the basics. But yeah. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you're new, and I'll catch you next time. Saharonica.